It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when I drove to my mother's house in Pretoria for our usual family lunch. I thought we were finally going to have a calm conversation about the mortgage. She had mentioned it on the phone, and I believed we would sit together and find a solution as a family. After everything I had done for them over the years, I never imagined what was waiting for me. The dining table was full of relatives. My aunt smiled at me. My younger brother, Lethabo, was sitting comfortably, and everyone acted as if it was just another family gathering. But the moment I sat down, my mother pulled out a mortgage statement and placed it right in front of me. She looked straight into my eyes and said, "The mortgage is $82,000. You will pay every cent of it. If you don't, then from today, this house is no longer your home, and this family is no longer your family." The entire room fell silent. No one defended me. No one even looked surprised. I slowly turned to my brother, hoping he would say something. Instead, he leaned back in his chair with a small smile on his face, as if he had been expecting this moment all along. I felt my heart sink, but I refused to cry. I quietly stood up without saying a single word. At that moment, I had no idea that the next 48 hours would uncover secrets that would change every one of our lives forever. As I drove away from my mother's house, memories I had tried to forget came rushing back. My father's death had changed everything. I was still young, still trying to build my own future, but there was no time to grieve. Overnight, I became the person everyone depended on. I got a full-time job and worked long hours because the family needed money. Every month, almost my entire salary went to paying the household bills. The electricity, the water, the groceries, and the mortgage payments all became my responsibility. I never complained because I believed that was what family did for each other. When my younger brother, Lethabo, got accepted into university, my mother came to me with tears in her eyes. She said, "Please help him. He deserves a better future. This is the last time I'll ask." I believed her. I paid every semester fee, bought his books, and even covered his rent. I was proud to see him studying, even though I had to give up many of my own dreams to make it happen. Then, my mother's health started getting worse. There were hospital visits, medical tests, and expensive medicine. Once again, she looked at me and said, "Just this one last time, Nality. Things will get better soon." I couldn't say no. I loved my mother too much, but one last time never came. Every few months, there was another emergency, another bill, another problem that somehow became my responsibility. I canceled vacations, delayed buying my own home, and stopped spending money on myself because someone in my family always needed help. The strange thing was that no one ever asked if I was tired. No one wondered how I was paying for everything or whether I had dreams of my own. They simply expected me to fix every problem, as if that was the only reason I existed. Slowly, helping my family stopped being appreciated. It became expected. They no longer said thank you. They acted as if I owed them everything. And now, after years of sacrificing my own happiness, they wanted something even bigger. They wanted me to carry an $82,000 mortgage as if it was my duty. For the first time in my life, I started asking myself one pitiful question. Was I ever treated like a daughter, or was I only treated like a wallet? After leaving my mother's house, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't call anyone to complain. I just got into my car, closed the door, and drove home in complete silence. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel, but my face showed no emotion. After years of carrying everyone else's burden, I had learned how to hide my pain. When I reached my apartment, I locked the front door behind me. It was quiet, peaceful, and completely different from the house I had just left. I walked down a short hallway and stopped in front of a small room with a locked door. Very few people even knew that room existed. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. It wasn't a bedroom or a storage room. It was my private office. The walls were covered with business plans, project boards, and maps showing clients from different countries. My desk held 2 laptops, business files, and contracts that I had worked on for years. This room held the biggest secret of my life. For the last 4 years, while everyone believed I was just an ordinary employee struggling to survive, I had been quietly building my own international consulting business. I worked late at night after finishing my regular job. I gave up weekends, holidays, and sleep. Every success happened in silence because I didn't want anyone asking me for money. The business had grown far beyond my expectations. Clients from different parts of Africa and even overseas trusted my work. My company was making more than enough money for me to live comfortably. The truth was simple. I could pay the $82,000 mortgage without even touching most of my savings. But as I looked around my office, I realized something important. Paying wasn't the problem. The problem was that my family believed they were entitled to everything I had. If I paid this mortgage today, there would be another bill tomorrow, then another emergency, then another demand. It would never end because they didn't want help. They wanted control. For years, I had confused love with sacrifice. I thought saying yes made me a good daughter. Now I finally understood that constantly rescuing people who refused to take responsibility only made them depend on me even more. I sat down in my chair, opened my laptop, and ignored the phone vibrating beside me. This time, I wasn't going to reward their greed. For the first time in my life, I chose myself, and that decision was about to change everything. The next morning, I made only one phone call. It wasn't to my mother. It wasn't to my brother. It was to my lawyer, Kojo Mensma. I asked him to look into every document connected to the mortgage. I wanted to know exactly how the debt had become so large. Something about the whole situation didn't feel right. My mother had always said the family was struggling, but deep inside, I felt there was more to the story. A few hours later, I was sitting across from Kojo in his office as he carefully placed several files on the table. He looked at me and said, "Nality, I don't think this mortgage exists because your family had no choice. I think you need to see these records yourself." My heart started beating faster as I opened the documents. The bank statements showed large amounts of money being spent over the last few, but they weren't payments for medical bills or basic living expenses. There were expensive vacations, luxury designer shopping, high-end furniture, a brand new luxury SUV, private club memberships, and thousands of dollars transferred into risky investment schemes that promised quick profit. I stared at the papers, unable to believe what I was seeing. All those years, my mother had been telling me they were barely surviving, but the truth was completely different. While I was working late nights, skipping holidays, and sacrificing my own dreams to help the family, they had been living a lifestyle they couldn't afford. Kojo handed me another file. "This is even more important," he said quietly. "The mortgage balance didn't suddenly grow because of bad luck. It grew because your mother and brother kept borrowing more money against the house. Every time they needed cash, they used the property as security. They believed that when the debt became too big, you would step in and pay everything, just like you always had before." I felt a deep pain in my chest. It wasn't the money that hurt me, it was the betrayal. They had never planned to solve the problem themselves. From the very beginning, I had been their backup plan. They expected me to work hard while they spent freely. They expected me to clean up every mistake without asking a single question. I slowly closed the file and took a deep breath. This was no longer just a family struggling with debt. It was a carefully planned trap, and for the first time, I had no intention of falling into it. The next 48 hours felt strangely peaceful. For the first time in years, I stopped trying to fix everyone else's problems. I put my phone on silent, made myself a cup of coffee, and focused on my work. But every time I looked at my screen, there were more missed calls waiting for me. My mother called again, and again, and again. When I didn't answer, the messages started coming. At first, they sounded calm. "Nality, please call me. We need to talk." A few minutes later, the tone changed. "If you don't pay the mortgage, the bank will take the house. Is that what you want?" Then came the guilt. "After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay your own mother." By the evening, the messages became angry. "You've become selfish. You think money is more important than family." I never thought I would raise such an ungrateful daughter. I read every message, but I didn't reply to a single one. The next day, my younger brother started calling. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't apologize for what had happened at lunch. His only concern was the house. "You know you can solve this in one day," he said in a voicemail. "Stop acting like a victim and send the money." A few hours later, my Aunt Abney called. Then cousins, then family friends. One after another, they all repeated the same story. "Your mother is crying. She's not sleeping. She's sick with stress. Please don't destroy your own family." Not one person asked me how I felt after being humiliated in front of everyone. Not one person questioned why I was expected to carry an $82,000 debt alone. They only cared about saving the house. By the end of the second day, my phone had hundreds of missed calls and unread messages. The pressure was endless. The threats became stronger. The tears became more dramatic. The guilt became heavier. But something inside me had changed. For years, I had always rushed to rescue them the moment they called. This time I stayed silent, not because I was being cruel, because I finally knew the truth. Kojo was still gathering documents, and I trusted that the facts would speak louder than all their lies. I wasn't waiting for my family to tell the truth. I was waiting for the truth to expose them on its own. And I had a feeling that when it finally did, nothing in our family would ever be the same again. Exactly 48 hours after my mother gave me her cruel ultimatum, everything began to fall apart. It was early in the morning when the bank's foreclosure team arrived at the house. A black vehicle stopped outside, and several officials walked toward the front door, carrying folders and legal papers. The neighbors watched from their windows as my mother's face turned completely pale. She had believed that, just like every other time, I would appear at the last minute and save everyone. But I didn't. Within minutes, my phone started ringing. It was my mother. I looked at the screen and let it ring. She called again and again. Finally, she left a voicemail, but this time her voice sounded completely different. She was crying. "Nality, please answer. They're here. They're taking the house. Please help us. I'll do anything. Just don't let this happen." Only 2 days earlier, she had told me to leave forever. Now she was begging me to come back. A few minutes later, my brother also called. The confidence in his voice had disappeared. "Nality, please, we need you. Just tell us what to do." I didn't answer him either. Instead, I drove to Kojo's office because he had called earlier and said he had found something important. When I arrived, he wasn't smiling. Several old files were spread across his desk. He slowly pushed one thick folder toward me. "I've been reviewing your father's records," he said quietly, "and I discovered something that should have been handled years ago." I looked at him, confused. "What do you mean?" He opened the old estate file. "After your father passed away, everyone assumed his estate had been fully settled. But it wasn't. The original estate file was never properly completed, and one important document was overlooked." My heart started racing. Kojo carefully removed a sealed envelope that had been attached to the file all those years. "The bank never knew about this," he said. "Your family never mentioned it." He placed the document in front of me. "As far as the law is concerned, this paper could completely change who has legal authority over the property." For a few seconds, I couldn't breathe. Outside, my mother's desperate phone calls continued. Inside that office, the truth was finally beginning to come out. And I realized that the house everyone was fighting over might never have belonged to them in the way they believed. I looked at the document with trembling hands, while Kojo quietly watched me. "This was signed by your father several years before he passed away," he said. "He wanted to make sure his family would always have a home, but he also wanted to protect the one person he believed would carry the biggest burden." I slowly opened the papers. My father's signature was right there, along with the signatures of witnesses and the official trust documents. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Years before his death, my father had created a family trust for the house. According to the documents, the property was placed under the trust's protection instead of belonging completely to one person. Then I saw my name, Nality Masiko. I was listed as the primary beneficiary and the person chosen to protect the trust if certain conditions were ever broken. I looked at Kojo with tears filling my eyes. "My father trusted me with all of this?" Kojo nodded. "He knew your kind heart. He also knew there was a chance that one day people might take advantage of you. That's why he added one final condition." He pointed to a paragraph near the bottom of the page. It clearly stated that if Nality was ever deliberately treated unfairly, forced out of the family home, or pressured into carrying debts created by others for their personal benefit, the trust could immediately take control of the property to protect its purpose. I sat there in complete silence. It felt as if my father was still protecting me, even after all these years. Kojo immediately contacted the bank and submitted copies of the trust documents for review. Later that afternoon, my mother and Lethabo were asked to come to the lawyer's office. Neither of them knew what they were about to hear. When Kojo explained the trust and placed the original documents on the table, The color disappeared from their faces. My mother could barely speak. Lethabo kept staring at my name, printed across the documents. He couldn't believe it. The same daughter they had ordered to leave forever, the same daughter they expected to pay for every mistake, was the very person their father had trusted to protect the family home. For the first time, they realized something they had never understood. They had spent years treating me like I had no value, but legally, I was never just another member of the family. I was the one my father believed would do the right thing when everyone else failed. And now, the house they had tried to use against me was protected by the very daughter they had thrown away. The next evening, I was sitting quietly in my apartment, trying to finish some work when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I looked through the peephole, I froze. It was my mother. For a moment, I couldn't move. Just 2 days earlier, she had looked me in the eyes and told me that if I didn't pay the mortgage, I should leave forever. Now she was standing outside my door. There was no anger on her face, no pride, no confidence, only tears. I slowly opened the door. My mother looked older than she had just a few days before. Her eyes were red from crying, and her hands were shaking. She looked at me and whispered, "Please, just talk to me once." For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. The silence felt heavier than any argument. Then she started crying. "I made a mistake, Nality. I never thought things would go this far. Please forgive me. We can fix this together." As I listened to her, memories rushed through my mind. I remembered standing at her front door only 2 days earlier. I remembered everyone watching as she pointed toward the exit. I remembered her cold voice. "If you won't pay, leave forever." Those words had broken something inside me. Now we were standing at another door. But this time it was my door. And this time, I was the one deciding what happened next. My mother reached for my hand. "I know I hurt you," she said through her tears, "but you're my daughter. Please don't leave your family like this." I gently stepped back. For years, I had forgiven every harsh word, every unfair demand, and every broken promise. Every time I chose love, every time they chose to use me, I looked at my mother with tears in my own eyes. "I never left this family," I said quietly. "You were the one who pushed me away." She lowered her head and cried even harder. For the first time in her life, she understood how deeply her words had hurt me. She wasn't standing at my door because she suddenly valued me. She was standing there because she had finally realized what she had lost. I took a slow breath. Forgiveness was possible, but trust was different. Some words leave scars that no apology can erase. And for the first time, the future of our relationship was no longer my mother's decision. It was mine. A few days later, Kojo arranged one final family meeting. Everyone was invited. My mother, my brother, my Aunt Abony, my cousins, and the relatives who had spent days calling me and telling me to do the right thing. They all arrived believing the meeting was about finding a way to save the house. They had no idea the real purpose was to reveal the truth. The room became completely quiet as Kojo placed several folders on the conference table. One by one, he opened them. First came the bank records, every loan, every extra mortgage, every large payment, every luxury purchase. The documents clearly showed that the debt had not been caused by medical emergencies or financial hardship. It had been created by years of careless spending and risky investments made by my mother and my brother. No one said a word. Several relatives slowly turned to look at them in shock. Then Kojo placed another file on the table. It contained records of my own payments over the years, receipts for household bills, university tuition for Lethabo, medical expenses, mortgage payments, thousands upon thousands of dollars that I had quietly given without ever asking for anything in return. For the first time, everyone saw the full picture. I had never abandoned my family. I had spent years holding it together. The silence in the room became even heavier. Then Kojo carefully unfolded one final piece of paper. "It is time to read your father's letter," he said. The letter had been written in my father's own handwriting years before he passed away. Kojo began reading it aloud. "My greatest hope is that my family will always stand together. Nality has always carried more than her share of responsibility. If you are reading this, I pray she has been treated with the love and respect she deserves. Never allow her kindness to become a burden she carries alone." By the time the letter ended, many relatives had tears in their eyes. My aunt quietly covered her face. One cousin whispered, We judged the wrong person. My mother couldn't lift her head. Lethabo stared at the floor without saying a single word. The truth had finally been exposed. The daughter they had called selfish was the one who had sacrificed the most. The people who had accused me of abandoning the family were the very ones who had been using me for years. No one defended them anymore. For the first time, the entire family saw the truth exactly as it was. And in that moment, my silence had spoken louder than every lie ever told about me. 1 year later, my life looked completely different. I had moved into a beautiful modern home in Pretoria. It wasn't the biggest house in the city, but it was filled with something I had never truly experienced before: peace. Every morning, I woke up without worrying about someone else's bills or another family emergency. I finally had the freedom to enjoy the life I had worked so hard to build. My consulting company had grown far beyond my dream. We were now working with clients in several African countries, helping businesses grow and succeed. The long nights, the sacrifices, and the hard work had finally paid off. One quiet evening, I walked into my home office and stopped in front of a framed photo of my father. I smiled softly. For a moment, it felt as if he was smiling back at me. "I finally stopped paying for other people's mistakes," I whispered. Saying those words lifted a weight that I had carried for many years. Just then, the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, my mother was standing there. She looked much older than I remembered. There was no anger in her eyes, no pride, only regret. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, she said, "Naledi, I'm sorry. I know I can't change the past. I just wanted you to know that." I looked at her quietly. I no longer felt anger, but I also knew that forgiveness and trust were not the same thing. Some relationships can heal. Others are changed forever by the choices people make. I wished her peace, but I also chose to protect the peace I had finally found. As she slowly walked away, I closed the door gently, not with hate, but with acceptance. Some doors are meant to close so that a better life can begin. My mom told me to pay the $82,000 mortgage or leave forever, but 2 days later, she discovered that the daughter she threw away was the only one who could have saved everything.